For 3 days, the rain had pounded Agbor without a break. The streets were submerged, power lines spit sparks, and the constant rumble of thunder was the only sound that mattered. But tucked away behind St. John's College, in a small, dimly lit science lab, Obina Oko was lost in his work. At 27, Obina was more than just a teacher. After studying renewable energy in Nasuka, he had returned home with a mission: to build a device that could generate electricity from concentrated air pressure. He called it Project Ikuku, the Igbo word for wind. But something strange was happening in his lab. The air itself felt different around his prototype. Small metal objects would twitch on the table. The electric fields were bending in ways they shouldn't. Sometimes, his computer would just flicker on by itself. Obina was a man of science. He didn't believe in myths or superstitions. He believed in equations, pressure readings, and cold, hard logic. But even logic was struggling to explain why his weather sensors were picking up an unknown form of energy in the atmosphere. He leaned over the turbine, his fingers flying across the laptop keyboard. The readings jumped again. Energy source detected, 12.6 kilopascals, unknown composition. He frowned, whispering to himself, "That's impossible. Air doesn't behave like this." Just then, a bolt of lightning struck nearby. The lab lights exploded, plunging everything into darkness. A deep, bone-shaking vibration filled the room. The metal turbine began to spin on its own, faster and louder with every passing second. A blast of compressed air roared through the lab, scattering papers everywhere. "Stop! Stop!" Obina yelled, fumbling in the dark to unplug the machine. But the moment his hand brushed against its surface, a surge of raw energy coursed through him. It wasn't pain, it wasn't heat. It was pure, unadulterated motion. The air around his body bent, forming a swirling, spiraling current. He felt his feet lift slightly off the ground. He gasped, his heart hammering against his ribs, and then his world went white. When Obina finally woke, the first light of dawn was breaking through the shattered windows. The lab was a disaster zone. The walls were cracked, the roof half collapsed. But he was alive. Not a single burn, not a scratch. He checked the turbine. It was a molten wreck, melted from the inside out. Yet, the air around it felt strangely charged, almost humming with a life of its own. He raised his hand, and a thin stream of dust on the floor floated up to meet his palm, drawn by some invisible force. He jerked his hand back in shock, and the dust fell. He stared, his mind racing. What was that? For days, Obina tried to ignore what had happened, but the changes wouldn't leave him alone. The fan in his room would spin to life the moment he walked in. His phone charger would spark whenever he touched it. And every time he felt a spike of anger or anxiety, a gust of wind seemed to push outward from his chest. One afternoon, he was helping some students fix a broken drone. As he accidentally brushed a circuit board, the motor whirred to life, even without power. The students cheered, thinking he'd worked some magic. He just managed a nervous smile and said, "Let's call that a lucky connection." But inside, he was terrified. He started a new routine, recording data every night, his heartbeat, the air pressure, the humidity, desperately trying to find a logical explanation. The more he measured, the clearer the terrifying truth became. That strange atmospheric energy wasn't gone. It had bonded with him. 3 weeks later, as the rainy season settled in for the long haul, a sleek black SUV pulled up outside his compound. A woman in a sharp dark suit stepped out, her eyes missing nothing. "Mr. Obina Oko?" she asked. "Yes. Who's asking?" he replied cautiously. She held up a badge. "My name is Nena Odu. I'm with the Nigerian Atmospheric Research Bureau. We've been tracking unusual weather activity in this region. Your lab seems to be the epicenter." Obina felt a chill run down his spine. "That's impossible. My equipment malfunctioned." Nena gave him a knowing half-smile. "A malfunction does not explain the 20-meter-high air column that formed directly above your building on the night of June 12th. He swallowed hard. "You were watching?" "Let's just say we have satellites that don't miss much," she said, stepping closer. "Mr. Oko, whatever you were experimenting with, it's not just science anymore. Later that night, unsettled by the visit, Obina opened an old, forgotten folder on his laptop. It contained his father's files. His dad had also been a physicist before he disappeared in a lab fire 15 years ago. The file name sent a jolt through him. Project Ikuku, classified prototype energy transfer. He scrolled through complex diagrams, energy coils, molecular maps, and equations that connected air motion directly to human neural pathways. His father hadn't just been building a machine. He had been trying to harness kinetic energy from the atmosphere through a human conduit. Obina's pulse quickened. He hadn't just stumbled upon his father's research, he was living it. Before he could read any further, the power cut out. Headlights flashed outside his window, and he heard the low idle of a nearby vehicle. His phone buzzed. A new message. The sender was unknown. It read, "We know what you found. Hand over the data, or we'll come for you. Vortex Industries." He peered outside. The black SUV was gone. In its place, a single red drone light blinked across the street, methodically scanning his house. He knew he couldn't stay. He quickly packed his father's notes and the melted turbine core into a backpack. But as he stepped out into the stormy night, the air grew heavy, the wind coiling around his feet like a living thing. His vision blurred, and his skin prickled with static. He dropped the bag, clutching his head as the air pressure skyrocketed. Lightning tore across the sky, but the bolt didn't strike the ground. It bent. It bent toward him. He screamed as the energy surged through his veins, bright and cold, flooding every nerve in his body. The ground shook violently. The wind screamed with him. And then, silence. When he opened his eyes, the air shimmered around his hands, moving with his thoughts. He could feel his own heartbeat pulsing like a drum inside the wind itself. He whispered, a mix of terror and utter amazement, "It's in me." In the distance, he heard the roar of engines getting closer, black helicopters cutting through the storm. Obina looked up, a newfound determination hardening his face. "I don't know what you people did to me," he said, his voice low and steady, "but I'm going to find out." He clenched his fist. The air tightened around him, and then exploded outward, lifting him several feet off the ground. His eyes widened. He wasn't falling. He was floating,